Hey everybody, welcome to Hit Rewind. This episode we're discussing the Godfather trilogy. I know, how original, but we're gonna do it anyway, so fuck you!
When we first talked about this, I think we were both in the same boat. We're like, you know what? I bet nobody's done this before. And then we started watching the movies and checking in on it. Turns out we're about the 100 millionth person to do this, but we're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, I just think about the fact that um, it's you can't ignore. It's like when we're going to discuss The Exorcist or Enter the Dragon. Yeah, they've been discussed a million times, but there's a reason why they've been discussed a million times. And it's fun to go back and explore these and see the influence The Godfather had on the whole genre, period.
I think really the thing that if people are interested in hearing about The Godfather in 2025, I think it really is going to be about The Godfather Part 3. I think that's the one people are going to be most interested because I think most people understand 1 and 2 are classics. There's not a lot to be said that hasn't been said before.
Yeah.
But I feel like the third one is not really discussed that much, except to say, oh, it's bad, or Sofia Coppola was really terrible in the movie. Other than those 2 things, and then there's not really a huge discussion about it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more fruitful in this episode than the other 2, because, I mean, we're probably just going to gush about the first 2.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go ahead. We already know, everybody knows the first 2 are great. There's nothing new that we're going to say here. Did you watch The Offer, by the way? The about the making of The Godfather?
I have not.
Okay, it's in my Vudu, or called Fandango now, but it was a limited series on Paramount Plus. It's like 6 episodes about the making of it. It's kind of a docudrama. Really interesting how hard it was to get to the big screen. I think it's hilarious that Albert Ruddy, the guy who worked so hard to get the first one made, said, "Oh, I don't need to come back for the sequel. Everything that's been said has been said." And then he said he wanted to work on other stuff that would be better. And if you look at his filmography, no, it wasn't. You probably should have stuck around for Godfather 2 and maybe even Godfather 3. Looking at your filmography. So yeah, fuck this. Let's skip over to the next 2. Or skip over the first 2. Let's go to the third one. And
okay.
I think what's fascinating is I haven't seen the conversation, but I've seen all the rest of, Francis Ford Coppola's movies during this time period, I believe. And he has a thing where he's constantly going back and retooling his films. And
the George Lucas disease.
A little bit, yeah. And since they're such close friends, I think they kind of share that together, like it was contagious. But I keep thinking, like, he redid One from the Heart. There's numerous cuts of Apocalypse Now. I think there might be a re-edit of Tucker, A Man in His Dream. And, I mean, we think about his last movie, Megalopolis, which, looking at the box office, that is his last fucking movie.
He already is talking about recutting this thing, too.
Yeah, it's just his thing. To make him more streamlined and better. Cotton Club got recut. But he went through a period where he really lost his ass financially. And he was just taking movies for the cash. And they were talking to him forever about Godfather 3, and he was always pushing it off. But I think seeing what had happened throughout most of the 80s, he probably wanted to put some money in the bank, to live off of his. I don't think he has winery yet, and he still wanted to make Megalopolis, I think, around the time that he was filming Godfather. He probably thought, okay, this will be the money I need to get it going. Who knew it was going to take, 30 plus years. But clearly Godfather 3 is a cash grab for almost everybody involved. It doesn't mean it's a bad movie, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are occasions where people do make cash grabs that end up being successful or even good. I can't really think of any at the top of my head, but yeah, I was researching a little bit more about the third one, and when I was watching it, because I didn't research anything before watching it. My preferred way of going, I like to go into movies blind, and I was like, you know what, this movie feels really sad. It feels like Coppola's trying to make and everyone else is just kind of going along with it. Like, no one really wants to be there. And then looking it up, he didn't want to make it either. He didn't give a shit. He was basically, they're like, hey, we want to make Godfather Part 3. And he said, okay, give me X amount of money and 6 months of time, and I'll make you the movie. They said, we'll give you half and about 3 months. How about that? And so that's how this got made.
Yeah, you think about sometimes when they're trying to get a sequel going, and sometimes they'll say, well, we're just going to do it without you, so the person comes back and does it. Like earlier that year, 1990, we had the whole thing with Gremlins 2, where that worked out, where Joe Dante said, you guys have tried getting a whole lot of scripts going, a lot of people to direct this. You keep bugging me. I don't want to do it, but you know what? Fuck it. I'll do it now, but you give me the budget I need, and you just let me do whatever I want. And that movie is complete and utter fun chaos. Whereas A lot of Godfather 3 seems like, okay, fuck it, fine. That kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say this. I think one of the biggest thing that hampers this film is Winona Ryder quitting right before production, and then Francis Ford Coppola casting his daughter, and nobody having the balls to say, look, dude, I'm sure your daughter's a very sweet person. She's not an actress. She's not a fucking. It's amazing that she's a good director at all now, because it's like she doesn't even understand how people talk or move or anything. So it's a shock to me that she became a good director. But no one stepped in
And
and
that was the
stopped
thing
them.
that I was when I was watching it at first. I was like, okay, she's not good, but she's not bad either. She's kind of right in the middle and just bland. And then I found out that that's actually they dubbed over her voice. So
Did
like,
they?
oh, so it was way worse than this.
Oh wow, because she doesn't even look like she looks like she just had like Botox and can't move her face. She's like daddy, blah, 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 blah. And just nothing in her eyes says that she's a person. It's just like almost like a person who had a lobotomy is doing an acting job. I couldn't believe any of it. And the
And
fact that
growing up like with like some of the greats, so
yeah,
like the chasm of talent is just so much more visible. Again, not necessarily her fault. It's the fault of Francis Ford Coppola for putting her in the movie when clearly she was not up to the task. And
yeah,
that's again
and
not
look,
her fault.
and I just don't understand. Like the problem is the whole movie relies on Andy Garcia defying Michael Corleone to he keeps seeing his daughter, he loves her, and what kind of person he's not going to do that for a mindless automaton is which how she gives her performance. So it has to be someone who's enticing that you really can't stay away from, and I just don't feel that at all. Yeah. There's no passion whatsoever, and I can see why Winona Ryder doing this, but I can't believe that there weren't other actresses that were possible to use. Really?
My mind just keeps going to like it might just have been a budget thing. Everyone knew it was a bad idea, but it's like it's in order to pay someone. Well, in order to get the person that we need to fill a role like this, we would need to pay them way more money, especially when we're short-handed like this, or like we're about to shoot. We don't have any
Yeah,
money.
maybe. I
I
kept
think it was
thinking
just
like,
a compromise that everyone had to make.
yeah, I think there had to been somebody else, but yeah, if they're really cut on time, then no. You had to get going right now, and I guess that's the biggest problem with the movie. But I do find everything outside of that, I do want to give some credit to. I really think Andy Garcia is fascinating as like this new slithery snake that enters the family when they're gone basically legit, and he just is unstoppable. He will not listen, and he caused all these problems with I think it was Joe Zaza. Um, yeah, Joe Montana's character, and I thought their scenes were really electric. And whenever he's on the screen, I'm fascinated. But I don't know. This seems like it's when Al Pacino came back. He was gone for like 4 or 5 years. He did Dick Tracy and this in the same year, and both of these huge fucking performances that aren't normally Al Pacino at all. And that became his standard. Those the hoo-ah, the yelling all the time.
Yeah, I think he nailed it in terms of like finding an actor who looks like a young Pacino, and also and also just the way that he's acting is very much like a young Corleone in the sense of like he has like the wit and the drive to do what needs to be done, and I feel like the movie really needed more of him because his rise to power in the waning years of Michael Corleone would have been a really interesting contrast, but there isn't really like a series of steps that he takes to get there. He's kind of already there is the problem. Like
Yeah,
when he first starts, he's in like his leather jacket, and people are making fun of him because he doesn't look official yet. And then by the end of the movie, he has like that more official, iconic Godfather style. But there isn't a middle between those two. It just happens like immediately.
that would
So
be an
they
interesting
need
story
to
to
develop
tell.
that.
Yeah. And you're dealing with a lot of the repercussions from Michael's life. I mean, you set up in the whole second movie that Fredo is basically betraying the family and choosing I can't remember it's the Vegas side. Damn, I can't
Yeah, I
remember the
can't
name.
remember that. I can't
Yeah,
remember
because
that.
I'm gonna say the name of the guy in the first one get killed, so it's not him. But and then he has to deal with the fact that he
Was it
basically
Rothman? Was it Rothman?
that sounds right. Yeah. But because Mo Green's in the first movie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so he's dealing with the repercussions and the haunting memory of having his own brother killed. Uh, yeah, and then he has a stroke, and you think that he's gonna finally tell his sister, and he just can't. Um, Everything that he's done throughout the movies comes back to haunt him, and deservedly so. I really do believe like you live this kind of life, you get what what is it? You live by the gun, you die by the gun.
Right, and that was really okay. So before I went back to rewatch both of those movies, I was always a fan of like I was like, oh, the first one's better than the second. I know most people think the second one's better.
Yeah, I got the opposite too.
And
I think the first one's better. It's more focused.
on rewatch, I think I do agree with most people. I do think the second movie is better because I didn't really consider exactly what's happening, like how the two stories of the young Vito Corleone and Michael Corleone story, how they coincide, or the more the contrast, I guess. And I do really enjoy sort of the fall of the Corleone family that's in the second movie.
Uh-huh.
Right after the father dies, everything goes to shit. The sister is just alcoholic, drug addict, completely self-absorbed, and then the brother is betraying the family, and then Michael makes the ultimate decision to basically kill off one of his family members, and then the end of the movie is him as an older man, just like completely alone and empty inside because he's lost everything because of his actions, because he's lost sight of what's important. And I think that's sort of Andy Garcia's character coming in, sort of like almost reminding him of what is important, because he is so vicious to people who try to hurt or attack his family, whereas Michael is more okay with capitulating if it means he gets something out of it.
Yeah, okay, I can see that, yeah. So he's like that fierce energy he had in the beginning of 2 before everything went to shit.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's very well edited. It looks beautiful. The action's fine, but it's just like I feel like a lot of it is just phoned in, and he tried to trim it up a bit with the coda cut, and it doesn't make it a whole lot better.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is I think the action is a little slapdash, not in sense of like, is it big enough? Is it a grand enough scale? Is it does it make your heart beat faster? Like, all those things are fine, but what it's missing, especially from the Godfather series, is how long it really takes before something happens. Like, in the first Godfather, they went through like 20 minutes of like, how is Michael going to kill these two guys at the restaurant? And they go through every single step on how they're going to do it, what the gun's going to be like, all these little details, so that you really feel immersed in the world.
Yeah.
And then in this one, it's like, I'm just going to kill him in the middle of the street on a horse with tons of witnesses, and we're not going to talk about it at all before or after.
Yeah, I think maybe
goes fine.
It's more of a surprise in the third movie instead of the build-up, except for the very final scene at the opera, where it's much more build up the tension. But the funny thing is, all that takes so goddamn long.
Yeah, because it misses a key component. When you set up something like this, there's always a moment where something goes wrong. There's a hitch in the plan, and then you have to improvise. And that scene for like The Godfather, when he was about to be patted down for a second time, where there was like a suspicion about him going to the bathroom, like, oh my God, is he going to do it? Like, there's like those moments usually, but in this one, it's like they're looking for the guy who's going to try to kill Michael Corleone, or Andy Garcia's character. I can never remember his name. And so like the sniper gets caught, but then he kills the guy immediately, and then another guy tries to find him, and then gets killed immediately. So there's like no tension. Like, it just keeps going. It just feels like it's taking forever.
Yeah. But and of course, the famous payoff at the end is that everything came back and got his daughter killed. And I think that if I had cared more about her character, or if she didn't just go, Dad, like a Valley girl, I think it would have been more affecting. And I'll say this, I'll give credit to Al Pacino for fucking selling the horror. But Sophia does not.
The only time you felt he looked alive in the entire movie.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing that's brutal about, like, this movie really could have been something, and it's really important. Like, the threads of such a great movie is there, and I feel like there's this movie called Triad Election, or Election 2, or I think in the US it's called Triad Election.
Okay.
It basically follows the same plot as this movie.
Oh, really?
But it just does it exceptionally well.
Okay.
It's about a gangster trying to make it straight, trying to get out of the life, but forced back into his position to go deeper in order to get back out, but then realizing that there is no way out once you're in. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to watch a movie that's basically the same thing, watch Triad Election or Election 2, however you can find it. It's way better. But that's also the thing that's kind of difficult about this movie in particular, is because the cut that I watched cut out so much of Sofia Coppola's character. I feel like the end would have worked better if I knew her more.
That's the irony of it all, right? Less bad performance, but then you actually might give more of a shit.
Yeah, then the ending falls flat because I don't know who this character is. She's just like supposed to be the personification of innocence in this, but there's like 3 scenes with her, so I don't know who the hell she is.
Yeah.
Versus like she'll annoy me every 20 or every 15 minutes, but then the ending would feel more real. So yeah, it's that horrible decision of like what makes the movie better.
Yeah, and I find the aftermath of all of these movies so fascinating because in America, we didn't have a huge mafia boost after the first 2 Godfathers, but sweet Jesus, in Italy, there's like 90 Godfather ripoffs because it made so much worldwide. But then around this time of the third one is we have a whole revival of gangster movies, modern and in the past, because we had the Untouchables. We just had Goodfellas a couple months before Godfather 3, and then, you're going to have a million, not exploitation, but smaller budget ones. And of course, a big influence on Tarantino's work for, I don't know, the first 3, 4 movies, is The Mob.
Yeah.
I feel like nobody talks about The Mob in the same way anymore. Now it's not so much the Italian mob. If you've seen anything about The Mob, it's always like, Chechnyan or Russian or something like that.
I don't know. Anything else to add?
Not really, but I am interested in exploring other mob movies after this at some point, and of course the other Francis Ford Coppola movies that he made during, between the 3 movies.
Yeah, I would be interested in that too.
Alrighty, everybody, thank you for listening to this episode. Kersey, thank you. What? Okay, sorry.
It's more of a Godfather 2 appreciation because I feel like I didn't really give it the credence that it really deserved.
Yeah.
When I first watched it, or the first few times I watched it, I think what people didn't pick up on, especially me at the time, was exactly how the 2 stories of Vito and Michael coincide. Or in this, I guess in this is more of a juxtaposition. These are similar stories that are told in opposite directions. We see what Vito is like in building up his gang, I guess, and then we see what Michael is doing. And that's why I thought originally that the 2 stories just didn't work together because they didn't feel like they're, were really, it's kind of like the same story, but it's a rise and a fall story. That's the point, is that they're not supposed to coincide because Michael is making all of the wrong decisions. He's taking the wrong lessons. I think there's such a great scene when he's in Cuba, and there are those freedom fighters, one of which kills himself by blowing himself up in order to get the police captain. And Michael makes that realization at that party where they're all eating cake. Of course, it's supposed to, let them eat cake, that whole sort of
yeah.
And Michael's just sitting there reflecting, and it's like he's realizing what he's done and where he's at, and that everything's about to fall apart. And then and basically acknowledges, like, look, these guys are willing to kill themselves in order to liberate themselves. We're going to lose if we keep doing what we're doing. And because he wavers, they start to attack him because they think he's weak. And then he goes the complete wrong direction, trying to assassinate everybody and failing miserably. And that's kind of what leads to his demise. I think that's an interesting way of going about it that I really didn't think about initially. Which is like usually mafia stories or like power fantasy stories, it's about the person achieving power, which is like what the first Godfather is like. But this goes for a completely different direction of showing like what trying to achieve power does to a person and how that can falter. And I just really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so funny because they never needed to do 3. They told the entire rise and fall. And I was reading.
It's literally the same. It's him alone in a chair with gray hair. It's literally the same ending because they couldn't even think of a new way to end it.
Yeah. They tried to do a 4th one after that, focused on Andy Garcia's character, where he basically destroys the entire thing during the drug wars of the 80s. And I was also like, well, so you're just telling the same story again, but with a different protagonist.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even opposed to that idea if you can do something interesting or unique with it. I think Andy Garcia does really well, and I actually would watch a movie with his character as the lead.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, this is probably one of the better viewing experiences. I initially was just like, I know enough about 1 and 2. I'm just going to watch 3. And then after watching 3, I was like, I'll watch a little bit of the second one just to kind of refresh my memory. and then my whole day was gone. So I was watching all of those.
Yeah, you should go. Excuse me. Go in and watch The Offer. It really is an interesting behind the scenes making of that first movie.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch it. If not right after this, tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's going to take a while. So 6 episodes or 8 episodes. I can't remember. All right. That is it, everybody. Thank you for listening, and have a good one.
See you, everybody.